All right, welcome to Mythbusters. My name is Jay Barnett. I am a former professional athlete, now a marriage and family therapist, author, and an international speaker. And today I have an awesome opportunity to speak with three awesome brothers that all share the same experience through sports and through our professional experience. And so I'm just going to let these guys briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the panel discussion. So we'll start with you, Marcus.
Okay, my name is Marcus Smith. I was a 6-year NFL veteran, played in the league for 6 years, and now I am a mental health advocate. I also have two foundations with the M2 Foundation and the Circle of M Foundation. And the Circle of M Foundation is based around mental health as well. And I've been doing a lot of stuff in the community just as far as mental health and just trying to get brothers to seek therapy if they need it, because I really do think that helps us out a lot. So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Awesome, Marcus. I appreciate you for sharing, brother. I want to go to my man, B. Cole, Brandon Coleman, goes by the name of Cole. So, man, introduce yourself and tell us what are you doing these days?
Well, as you said, my name is Brandon Coleman. I go by Cole. I retired with the New Orleans Saints. I played 4 seasons with them, medically retired. After that, I moved back home to the Prince George's County area, right outside of Washington, D.C. And now I'm into different things like modeling, entrepreneurship, and then also, I'm really big into this mental health space as well. The transition, as we all know, that we're going to get into about a little bit later, the transition of that leaving that space, that one career and heading into a different area. So I definitely have some experience, in therapy, and we'll just get into that a little bit later though.
Okay, awesome, man. Thank you for sharing, Cole. Last but not least, we got a big man with us today, Mr. Joel Hawley. Am I saying that last name correct, Joel?
That's right.
All right, Joel. So, man, Joel, listen, I'm just really, man. Was reading part of your bio, man, and after you retired, you gave away everything. So, Introduce yourself, man. Tell us a little bit about it, and I also want to hear your reasoning behind why did you give everything away.
Yeah, my name is Joe Hawley. I played 8 years in the NFL. Played 5 years with the Falcons, 3 years with the Buccaneers. In 2017, like you said. Like most of you guys know, I mean, football is really stressful on the body and mentally and emotionally, and I was just burnt out, ready to walk away. And even though I was walking away on my own terms before, I kind of had to, I was still surprised at the void it left. And I was going through a pretty big breakup. I left my engagement at the time as well. So it was a huge life transition. And I wanted to go, on this adventure to go find myself, who I was without this game that I spent my entire life pursuing greatness at. And so I ended up wanting to start fresh. So I ended up giving all my possessions away to charity. I bought a van. I rescued a dog from the shelter, and I traveled the country for the better part of 2 years. On that journey, I learned a lot about myself, a lot about who I am. I developed a lot of tools to work on my mental and emotional health, and I've gotten involved in a lot of communities that are really this kind of mental health, especially for men, is really important. I've gotten involved in a community called Every Man, where they do, retreats and groups for men to create safe containers for guys to really express their emotions openly. And I'm actually working on launching a community similar to that November 2nd called the Heart Collective, and it's going to be for former male professional athletes. So we can come together in kind of situations like this, and we can just have discussions and talk about, our journeys. It's hard. One thing I've realized transitioning out of sports, it's hard to find people, even like therapists, and we can talk about this later, is a little bit of the resistance to finding a therapist and them really understanding what we're going through. And so I feel like there's a lot of power in guys that are going through similar experiences to come together. You don't really need to seek professional help, but just being able to have a container where you can express yourself openly, honestly, and vulnerably. So it's really close to my heart, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion today.
Man, Joe, thank you so much, brother, for that, man. Very powerful words, man, and thank you for your level of transparency. And also, I want to thank each of you guys for joining us on this panel discussion today for Mythbusters. I think this is so powerful because so many times, man, people don't get a chance to see who we are as human beings. They are often looking at us from the spectrum of being athletes, these gladiators, these big, strong men that on the field, we're beasts, we're animals, and we got to be hardcore, we got to be nasty, we got to be grimy, but they really don't get to see the heart of men, and especially when it comes to football players, because we wear helmets. So it's not like basketball. You get a chance to see their face, and you get to see all of the expression that they express, throughout the games. And so this is so important. And for those that are watching, listen, take advantage to really glean from each of these men. And as Joel said, to listen to our journey, to listen to just our thoughts and even our experiences. Because one of the things is that sports can provide only a certain level of experience that life itself doesn't teach you. And while life is parallel to sport, especially to the game of football, but however, outside of the game, man, there's so much life that we have to experience and so beyond the game. Now, I want to go into the first question, and whoever wants to take this on, and I think this is a great question to lead out with because oftentimes society don't allow us to really be open with our masculinity as it pertains to when it comes to things of the heart, matters of the heart, so I say. So one of the first questions on Mythbusters is therapy makes me look weak and questions my masculinity.
Ooh, I could take
Man,
that one.
take that one, Mr. Marcus.
I think that question I think that's a good question. And furthermore, I think with all us athletes and we, especially being in the communities that we came from, I think the whole therapy aspect was like not even existent. It wasn't. It was something that was a taboo. It was something that if we went to do it, we were crazy. It was something that we just wasn't really growing up. It just wasn't something that we did. So the first time that I actually went into therapy, and I haven't really shared with a lot of people about it, but I did. I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave because I thought it was a joke at first. I'm like, why would I sit down and talk to someone, about my feelings that I kind of felt like maybe she wouldn't understand. But then as I kept going, it was like I started to really find out who I was. I started to figure out like all the things that I had been going through. It had nothing to do with football. It has a lot to do with stuff that I dealt with at the younger age. And a lot of times I know you said it before, a lot of times stuff that we deal with when we're younger, it carries on to our adulthood. So that question, I just feel like the whole weak aspect, it doesn't make you weak to go to therapy. It actually is you saying that you're strong and you're courageous and that you're willing to control your mental capacity, because guess what? Those same things, those same demons, those same things that we deal with can be passed down to our kids and the next generation.
Yeah, and that's good, Marcus. And I want to go to you, Joe, because I want to help those that are watching. There is a level of self-awareness that you have to have, right, to really not so much that the question is about your masculinity, but the question is about your overall well-being. And so I think when we remove that part of it, like it really allows you to connect and understand that this doesn't mean that I'm weak. It actually shows that I'm self-aware. Joel, how important is self-awareness, right? Outside of just what therapy or this stigma that is attached to, if I go to therapy, it makes me look weak and question my masculinity. But how important is it for self-awareness?
Yeah, I think awareness is literally in my opinion, one of the most important things that you can develop. And that's why there's a lot of tools out there to help improve your awareness. I've developed, meditation practice, which is basically a practice to create space so that you can witness the stories and the thoughts that are coming up within you. But I think as far as therapy, I mean, there's this story in our society that it's not okay for men to show emotion. It's not okay for us to express how we feel. It's not okay to cry because it comes off as weakness. But I think there's this transition happening. And like I said earlier in the show, there's so much power and healing in the ability to just express your emotions, express how you feel, and have an awareness of how you feel. And it takes practice. And if energy is coming up within you, if you're getting frustrated, you have something going on with your partner, there's a conflict, or something happens at work, and you're feeling a certain type of way, if you don't have an awareness of what that energy is, and you don't have someone to communicate with about what's coming up, then it just gets trapped, and it creates more problems, it festers, and it explodes in, immature ways down the road. And so I really think that, it's really important to and the power of, doing therapy myself is, the power isn't just being like, you're not seeking advice really. You're seeking a safe container to express how you feel openly and vulnerably. And the more you can do that, and the more you can practice that, and it kind of comes out of therapy, and it comes out into your everyday life, and you can live such a healthier, more fulfilling, more balanced life moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Cole, would you like to add to that, man?
I mean, it's hard to put into words how I feel about it, but I definitely think, being self-aware and having that stigma of being soft or weak has been something we've been dealing with since we were kids.
Yeah.
We weren't taught to express ourselves in that manner, or if we felt a certain way, we were taught to keep it in. And for so long, it just became a way of life. So by the time we get to where we are now as professional athletes, we're still bottling all these emotions that we've had for over decades now. And then, like Joe said, we get to express those, and we don't communicate it because we don't know how to communicate it, right? I wasn't comfortable going to therapy the first time because I wasn't comfortable communicating those feelings, right? I knew they were there, but it was just a matter of that I had that stigma in my head. Like, I didn't want to come off as soft. Like, nah, don't try me. Like, I felt like that, nah, don't try me. This is something, now that I'm aware of myself and I'm comfortable in my skin, I'm comfortable in who I am, and, removed from the game, I'm 100% comfortable with that. I don't think it makes me soft, or anybody else for that matter, soft at all. Like, I think it shows a new level of self-control that, that you have that confidence in yourself and that awareness to take care of yourself in that manner.
Yeah, man. Man, Cole, you said a lot, brother. And I think that's spot on, because one of the things is Joe, you touched on it. Once you become self-aware, like, the biggest challenge is when people come into the practice, it's helping them put language to what they're feeling. Because there's a difference in feelings of sadness and depression. Because often feelings of sadness is attributed or associated with a particular event, right? Because think about it, in order to be happy, something has to be happening. You know what I mean? In order to have that expression of happiness. And so that feeling of sadness can be the opposite, that I had an expectation for something to go this way and it didn't turn out how I expected. So now I'm sad. And opposed to having depression, which is associated with I'm not eating, I become withdrawn, I become very disassociated with my family. I'm sleeping longer. And I think that's one of the things that allows you to really have an understanding and to give language to those thoughts and feelings. And as you both said, that whole self-awareness really allows you to have self-control. And I think when we as a society can provide the visual of what we're doing right now, this is going to allow other men to feel comfortable. Because you're right, Cole, especially for us, and I'm not sure, I grew up in the South. And so, I grew up in a household where what goes on in this house stays in this house. So the first time I'm in therapy and they talking about open up and tell me how was your childhood, I'm like, this ain't what we do. So it's so many functions that we have from our family systems that, as you said, Cole, that has taught us how to function, and not just in sports, but it's just how we function in life, period. And so I want to transition into this next question, and I think uh, I want to go to you on this, Joe. You talked about, right, going through this transition in life. The question is, therapy only benefits me and the relationship I have with myself. How can you break that myth down?
So the myth is that it only benefits me.
Right.
And that's totally false, because, as I've learned in my experience, the more connected I've become with myself, the more aware I become of my emotions, the more connected I become with all of my relationships. I had a really conflicted relationship with both my parents, and by doing this work and understanding the stories of my own stories that I've created in my mind and the resistances I've had to them, and by continuing to express my emotions in a healthy way and finding the language to do that, I've been able to reconnect with them on such a profound and deep way that I thought I'd never be able to get back. With my relationship, when a couple of years ago when I was leaving football and then I was walking away from that engagement, that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And that was actually one of the first times I ever sought out couples therapy. And I don't think without that experience of having that therapist walk us through that transition of our relationship, it wouldn't have happened in the way that it did. It would have been a lot more unhealthy, a lot more conflicted. And so, therapy is not just for you. I mean, and honestly, like, even if it is just for you, you improving yourself does improve your whole reality. I mean, it's the only thing we really have is the lens in which we perceive reality. And so we all have our own unique lens. And so by improving that lens and uncovering, kind of like defogging the glasses, as you will, everything improves.
Absolutely, man. Because once you change those lenses, everything around you changes.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, man, what we're doing is we look at everything based on the lens that we have on, rather than allowing ourselves to take these lenses off and says, let me see it from a different perspective. I never forget a mentor says, stop harassing the world with your perspective. And so many times, man, we get locked in because this is what's going on in our world. And so I want to go to you, Marcus. Therapy only benefits me and the relationship I have with myself. How would you debunk that myth?
Because when I started therapy myself, I was with my wife. My wife was in the room with me, and she kind of helped me get all the stuff out that I wanted to say. Also, because when I was in the room with her, I feel like it brought us closer together. And so every time we do therapy now, it's usually me by myself, but also times it is her being in there with me on some days too as well. Because when I have her there, when I'm speaking to my therapist and I'm speaking to her, she kind of helps me actually articulate and sift through all the stuff that I was necessarily dealing with. So I feel like that whole myth it actually brings, if anything, it brings everything together more than it brings it apart. Because you really, like I said before, you really start to see who you really are. And a lot of times in our community, like my father, my dad, I don't really know who my father is because he has been masking so many things. And I really never had the thought in my head to ask him, like, Dad, who are you? So me speaking and me saying like who I am to the therapist, it really opens up a door for me. And then also it just opens up everything in my corner, all the relationship that I have. It just made it better because I was better.
Man, awesome. Cole?
Man, I keep having to follow up after these two. Boy, they saying everything that needs to be said, but
Yeah.
Just to piggyback again, it helps you first and foremost, but when I'm leave therapy, now I got to go back out into the world. And so now I have to engage and interact with my family, with co-workers, people at the grocery store. They feel that energy, but now I'm able to express my thoughts in a more clear manner to where in a way that they can receive it. And now we have that open line of communication now, and I feel confident and comfortable in whatever it is that I'm dealing with enough to express it, for everybody to understand each other. And so with that in the equation, that just debunks the whole myth right there.
I often tell my clients that the relationship you have with yourself will determine the relationship you have with others. So if the relationship you have with yourself is toxic, if it's dysfunctional, if it's unhealthy, it is what you will get from other people. Because you don't get what you want from relationship, you get who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things is that process of therapy, man, not only is it shifting your perspective and it's also challenging those behavior patterns, but it's also impacting your future relationships. And so, man, thank you guys, man, for sharing such profound perspectives on that. And I want to move to this question because there's a lot going on in our world right now. We have a pandemic, we have a social a movement that is taking place, and everybody has issues, or should I say, everybody has gone through a traumatic experience. I want to make sure I'm reading this question right. I've gone through traumatic experience, but that was when I was a kid. I've grown up now.
So the myth is, now that I'm grown up, I don't have that trauma
anymore. Right.
Well, if you were a kid and if you experienced a certain level of trauma and you never talked about it, that's still inside. And now that you've grown up, it's just had years to sit there and build up tension, build up, could be anger, all these different emotions. And it depends on, if you have, anything can trigger that now, right? So triggers are connected to trauma in different ways. So if anything now that you're grown up can be a short trigger to your trauma in your past, and that could take you on a different path that you didn't know that you might have been doing good, but you could have had a conversation, or you could have saw something on TV, and it could have triggered something from your past, and now you're going down a spiral because you never addressed it. So I think, I hope that really.
That's spot on, and you're so right, because especially where we are right now, and looking at the young people and the kids right now that are being raised and having to go through all of these different social movements, and having, for the first time, the Gen Xers are really, for the first time in their life, are seeing what racism looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, they're actually seeing what we saw growing up, whether it was, directly or indirectly, from reading history books and from the civil rights movement and things like that. And some of those things were very traumatic experiences, and though we were kids, but some way or another, it stayed with us, because a lot of us didn't have an outlet to express and to talk about these things. And so, Joel, seeing where the climate is, how important is it for, these safe spaces, as you spoke of earlier, the safe container, to have an opportunity to be able to express, to help debunk, that myth that it happened when I was a kid. I saw George Floyd murder when I was a kid. That's not going to bother me as an adult.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of the problems we deal with as adults when it comes to addiction, numbing out, is these emotions that we don't know how to process usually stem on a deeper level from these childhood stories. And I know, like, we talk about traumas a lot, and I think a lot of people have a resistance. Like, I wasn't traumatized when I was a kid. And it's, when we're young, we develop our perspective and our story and how we interact with the world. And that comes from our society, from what we see on TV, from our parents, from our neighborhood, from our friends. And we develop this way to show up in the world. And it creates a story about who we are and how we interact with the world, and then how the world is. And that develops our perspective. And each one of us grew up in a different place, and we all have a different perspective because we have, different influences. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like, trauma doesn't need to be this really traumatic event that like really hurt me when I was a kid that I just try and numb out. It could be something as simple as, seeing something on TV and you think that's the way the world is, and then you develop a story. And when you're at a young age, you don't have anything to relate that to. So you're kind of just absorbing, right? And so as we go on this journey through life, it's all about questioning those stories. And if you don't ever question those stories, like you said earlier, you have this narrow vision of what reality actually is. And we all have this subjective experience. And I think the real power is in questioning those stories and having a safe container to go back and visit those stories and traumas and things that happened when we were kids and understanding them from a different perspective. And I think there's a lot of power in, sitting in therapy or even in a small group with other men and being able to go back to something that happened when you were a kid from this perspective of an adult, where you have a lot more information, a lot more language, a lot more, confidence in who you are, and you can go back and relive that story in a different way. And then that will adjust your perspective. And it really is a powerful, powerful work to do that. And I think everybody really needs to question the stories about who they are and what the world is. And that's doing the work on ourselves is really how we're going to change the world, collectively. It's like everybody wants to, look and be like, well, that person did this, that person needs to change. But in reality, the only way we can really heal the world is by healing ourselves and doing the work on ourselves and showing up in that way. And then that it leads by example and shows others that it's possible.
Absolutely, because I think there's so much empowerment in having the space to express, because I think for most of us, right, we deal with a lot of secondary trauma, is what we call in therapy. This trauma that was indirectly. So even from what we're seeing right now in the pandemic, I posted this probably months ago on my Instagram. I said, by the year 2021, everyone's going to need to be in therapy. Because of that, there's so much that has happened throughout this year. You think about the experience, and especially for us as athletes, right? You think about the passing of Kobe Bryant, right? For many of us, that was tough, right? And I know for myself, man, I call my therapist, and I'm a therapist that has a therapist. I'm like, yo, dude, I can't. There was no way to process Kobe's passing, because I feel like Kobe's, he represented immortality to us, right? Especially for us athletes, as us guys, because no matter if you was football, basketball, baseball, you had a respect for the Mamba mentality, for his overall work ethic. And just, even just seeing the helicopter, right? And just them showing that picture over and over, as you said, Joe, that is traumatizing within itself, right? Because that's, when you think about Kobe, that's the picture that comes in your head. And I know for myself, right, going back to what you said about the stories, even the stories that we tell, the moment I saw that, I said, man, I'm never getting on a helicopter. And so you see how pictures, words, relationships, neighborhood, as you spoke of, all of these social constructs plays a role in how we are shaped. And I want to kind of stay on this topic. Cole, I see you shaking your head. How did Kobe's passing affect you, man?
Man, you caught me off guard with that one. That hit home. That hit different for me. It's one of those moments. To be honest, that was the first time in my life that I will never forget where I was.
Yeah.
When somebody, that significant passed away. Like, I wasn't around for Dr. Martin Luther King or anything like that. But that situation, it was Sunday afternoon. I remember I looked at my phone. I was on my phone, and the first tweet started to come up. And I'm like, why would anybody ever play like this? Like, why would anybody ever make this up about Kobe? And I'm thinking, nah. Like, and then it just kept kept showing up on my thread. It stopped me literally in my tracks. You know, for a couple of weeks, it was tough. I cried I cried that whole day. Like after it was confirmed, and then his daughter, I cried that whole day, and that was tough for me. It still seems surreal. It still seems surreal, but knowing that Mamba mentality, knowing the legacy that, that he already had put in place from years of hard work and dedication and consistency, knowing how we're supposed to continue to carry this torch to keep his legacy on and his daughter's legacy, that it motivates me, it inspires me, and it definitely left a huge void in the world, because he was a global icon. But he was a husband and a father first and foremost. So I empathize with the family, and I just felt, I just couldn't imagine. That happening.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing, Cole. And I remember reaching out to a couple of athletes that I'm connected to, and really, I think, Joel, it was a really great opportunity for men, because it's amazing how things happen sometimes that causes a shift, a paradigm shift in just the world. And because for the first time, you saw men crying, you saw men expressing emotions, not just because you had a pancake block, not because you knocked somebody out, not because you hit a home run or you dunked on somebody, or you made a big play, the emotions of grief. And I feel like that was really this opportunity for us as men to, it was almost like the world was saying, okay, you guys can cry now. And because you saw men from all over tweeting, and expressing, and we saw, LeBron get off the plane and being consoled by, by one of his teammates after hearing the news. And it's just now all of a sudden we fast forward, we go through the George Floyd incident. And so we have all of these different things going on that now men are saying, man, I gotta get this out. And so this leads me to this next myth. So people are discussing mental health now more than ever. It's a trending topic. So Marcus, so that means people are getting treatment.
Yeah, I think a lot more people are getting treatment, just for all of the stuff that we have been witnessing. And I think with the pandemic going on, it forced us to actually sit down and not do anything. We couldn't go outside, right? So we were forced to see everything on the TV. Everything that was on the news was the pandemic. And people seeing the George Floyd incident, them actually seeing that on TV, it was traumatizing for me. I even had to go talk to my therapist. So I know for a fact that now I think actually that is true, because me doing my mental health stuff and me talking to different men each and every week, I have had people even come into my DMs to say, what do I need to do to help my mental state? I'm not feeling well right now. I don't know what's going on with all this stuff going on. You got people losing their jobs. You got people losing family members, and it's a rush right now for mental health and mental therapy, because now it's like a cry for help. And I just think, man, we're in a world now where, like you said, I think that everybody needs some sort of therapy. Might not be a actual therapist, but a person that's a mental health coach, somebody that they can confide into that will be unbiased in a way. And I just truly think that it's going to start to be even more and more because, man, from everything, even talking when you guys were talking about Kobe, like I cried for 3 days with Kobe, and I questioned God for those 3 days. I questioned why, because he has done he's done everything that you're supposed to do. He had his trials and tribulations, like he was doing so well, and I just felt like it was just so a bad moment. So when you have things like that happen, and then you have something like George Floyd, and then you have the pandemic, you have all those things running together. It's like
a lot.
It's either you're gonna run into a brick wall or you're gonna face the music and say, okay, yo, I have to, because now your mind is just thinking at 30,000 miles a minute, right? And you don't really know what to do. So when you have a voice and you say something, man, and you have a guy to DM you and say, man, you stopped me from killing myself. That right there shows you that, yo, it's a cry for help, and it's a lot more people that are gonna seek therapy and need it.
Yeah. So you would say, Marcus, that you believe that people are getting treatment now since we're talking about mental health.
Yeah, I would say that they're doing more of wanting to get treatment. Now,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter of getting treatment, I'm not sure of, but over the past month or two or so, I would say that people are starting to go that route a little bit more than they had before.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty accurate statement. I think people are questioning and gaining more knowledge and understanding, but as you said, actually going to treatment, it takes a different level of courage, to actually says, okay, I know I need help, but I'm going to go to get some help. And so what do you think about that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people are actually seeking help, but I do know that the discussions are happening, and it's becoming more of a topic. It's becoming more collectively acknowledged as an issue, especially as men showing up, in a vulnerable, open, and honest way. This shift of that is really the definition of what it means to be a strong masculine, right? Is to be able to show up and be vulnerable and be connected with yourself. And, like we've been talking about, when things happen, and a lot of this has been happening a lot lately with these big paradigm shifting events, like Kobe's death, like what a reminder of impermanence, right? Like, the guy's in his prime, getting into his second career, doing big things in the business world and making a huge difference. And then boom, it's just over. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wow, I could just die tomorrow, like that easy, like that quick. And it really makes you, it is this story shift, like all the things that are happening, the pandemic, everybody's going through their everyday life, living their story, creating their life. Tomorrow is going to be just like today. And we get caught up in this like kind of consistent routine. And then all of a sudden it's taken away from you. And so when the collective has to question the story that we're living as like a race and a society and a culture, it really, the pandemic's been a really good example of people forced to slow down. I know for me, I was traveling a lot, and it forced me to slow down, and I was in my house, and it made me really, it almost forced me to go inward and question what was coming up within myself. We get so busy sometimes, and we can kind of run away from our emotions, like especially the little things, like we can go to work, or we can go travel, or we can go, to the bar, or whatever it is you do to like kind of numb out and escape. Even the little things, when this whole event has kind of forced you to slow down and really look at yourself. And I think that's why a lot of people are realizing, wow, I do have some stuff within myself that I need to look at and work on. And I'm really, it's really an exciting time that these discussions are happening. And I know there's this big shift happening to bring balance within ourselves as men. And I think it's, really going to help heal the collective, because when we're out of balance individually, then it's out of balance in our society, and you can see it, it's in the news
Yeah.
every day. And so by doing this work and showing up and providing spaces for guys to, it's not even all about like seeking treatment and therapy and trying to find someone. It's about, finding a friend, a family member, someone that you trust, that you can just, say how you really feel. And like, I don't think a lot of people have that. And I think finding that is really the important piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think partially it's because, there's this level of, there's this standard that we've created. And I think you talked about this early, Joe, from the stories that we created, that if I say what I really feel, how am I going to be viewed? And so it's this constant approval that I don't want to say too much because I don't want to be viewed as weak. I don't want to say this because I don't want to feel like, I just, don't have it together. And I think that's the biggest mistakes that we can make with our life, is trying to present this facade, this image that I have it together. And I'm going to ask this question because that was one of the reasons that really empowered me to become a therapist. My story is I was a free agent in 2006 to Green Bay, and I'm going through this whole process, and I go back and I play a few years of arena football, and it's just the thoughts that, okay, how do I do life knowing that my expectations that I have for football is not going to be what I thought it was. And so I struggle with depression. And my story is, and I share this when I'm speaking, is I'm a 2-time suicide attempt survivor. And one of the things I want to add this question to what we're talking about is that, and I'm going to create a myth, is that mental health is not important in professional sports. And I want everyone to really answer that, man. And I just created that myth. And so I just added to the question. And we know that it is, but people don't think that it is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going through the transition recently from sports and realizing, like, not only in sports, like the having to perform at such a high level and always being scrutinized under the microscope by, the coaches, the front office, the media, and then even like your relationship. For me personally, I'll talk from my experience, my relationship with my family shifted. Like I felt like I started being treated more like a professional athlete than a son or a brother. And it was like very subtle, but it was like this shift where it created this kind of wall, and it really creates this isolation. So, from the outside perspective, it looks like we have everything we've ever wanted, but it really, the more you achieve, like the more isolated you kind of become. And then going through the transition process, everything you've ever worked for is gone. And, normal people, that haven't gone through that experience don't understand. They think, oh, you made a lot of money, you lived out your dream, you played professional sports, like you can do whatever you want, you can retire, but that's not it, right? And we have to find purpose. And I think everybody, especially men, have to have something to wake up, get out of bed in the morning, and put their effort and energy into. And it's hard to find that when you put all of that, and a lot of people always say, like, I know they harp on this big time in the NFL and the NFLPA, and they're like, have a backup plan. In college, they're like, have a backup plan. It's so hard to make it. It's so hard to stay in the league. It's hard to make enough money to retire on. And what they don't tell you is, if you have the backup plan, like, it's so difficult when you're playing that if you have a backup plan and you put any energy towards that, you're not going to make it, because you have to be so singularly focused on achieving this dream, because it's so competitive, that's all you have to put your energy towards. And then when it's over, it's like, okay, like, what do I do now? Right. And figuring that out has been quite the journey for me. I know it is for a lot of athletes. And I think, it's an isolating experience. It definitely, you feel really alone, even though I know all of us in this room probably share the experience, but it's hard to find that group and that community. And I think that's really important. I think that's where therapy, men's small groups are becoming a thing, reaching out and finding somebody that you can confide in and share your journey with and figure out who you are on a deeper level.
Wow, man. Thank you for that, Joe. Thank you, Cole.
Man, so in professional sports, you have what people called professional athletes, but at the end of the day, you take the jersey off, you take the warm up off, the suit off, whatever it is that you're wearing, and you go home, you're a human being. Just like your next door neighbor is a human being. Just like the person that works at the stadium who's not a professional athlete, but they're in the same environment, they have those issues as well, the same issues that we have to deal with. If I gotta go to work on Sundays and play the game, and I gotta come home Sunday night and deal with all those same issues that are still in my household, that's it right there. Like, I only had to. I'm gonna let Marcus go ahead run that.
Hey, listen, man, Cole, you said enough, man.
Yeah.
You said enough, brother, because that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And Joe touched on it. People think, you know, they look at us and they say you've arrived, but again, I think Joe, like you said, really, and this is just I think in any capacity as it pertains to men, because oftentimes we're looked at, okay, you need to be a provider. You need to be the protector. I need you to be able to perform. And on top of that, you can't be emotional. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear you crying because I need you right now. So, and it's so much pressure. And I think this is why the suicide rate is so much higher in men when they leave their respective places. A guy loses his job, or a guy is cut, or a guy get hurt. Because as Joe said, right, you have this thing and you have to be locked in. And it's not that, okay, I've been a doctor for 30 years and I can walk away. It's like, you know, with sports, there's a window, no matter how old you are, no matter how much you feel that you can play 10, 15 years, there's a window. And so, and that your potential isn't maximized in that window, man, it's a lot to try to live with. And so, man, yeah, you said a lot, Cole. So, Marcus, debunk that myth. Mental health is not important in professional sports.
You know, speaking on just my experience, man, I was a first round draft pick, and Cole, you trained with me before the draft. And to be honest, I'll be honest with you, I was burnt out before I got drafted. I was so burnt out because it was soon as the bowl game was over, we had to go do Senior Bowl, and then after the Senior Bowl, we had to go do the Combine, and after the Combine, we had to go do Pro Day, and then after Pro Day, we had to go fly the teams, and it was just a lot. So when I got drafted, it was like I dropped my shoulders, like, okay, like let me just decompress a little bit. But no, I couldn't decompress because guess what? I had to go graduate. Then I had to fly to Philly to do the press conference. Then I had to fly back to get my stuff. And then the next day I was on the field. So that right there was a lot in itself. And throughout my whole experience, I didn't want to tell myself that I was depressed. All the things that that you read about, like what's the being depressed, like I kind of knew that was me, but I didn't want to tell myself that was me. I just wanted to fight through that. And so I realized that going into my 5th year in the NFL that I had been depressed for 5 years, every year that I've been in the NFL. And it's a lot of pressure. Like me being a first-round pick, going to the Philadelphia Eagles, it was a lot of pressure on me, not just in the locker room. It was a lot of pressure on me at home too as well, because I can attest to what Joe was saying. I felt like my family was looking more at me as an NFL player rather than their son. So that weighed a lot on me. And like me doing stuff for them, it was just, I didn't really feel appreciated in that way. I felt all alone. And, you know, that's why my wife came into my life. She came in my life at the right time because I was going downhill. I was going down a weird spiral. I used to cry in my room every night because I wasn't playing. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I didn't want to ask anybody what was wrong with me until that time where I tried to commit suicide myself. That's the only time when I really figured out like something I got to do something. I have to go speak to somebody, talk to somebody or something, because I feel like that I'm going to lose it. And we all know that it's important now, but how can we stop, or if this conversation leads to other NFL players, and I'm a kid you not, guys, like 3 days ago, a guy that works at the Seattle Seahawks said 3 guys came into the room and told him that they were ready to end their life and that they didn't feel like they didn't want to do it anymore. So you got 3 guys that's coming in saying that now, where when we came into the league, you would never hear anybody going in saying anything like that, and you dang sure not gonna talk about it. So yeah, I just, that's a little bit about my story, but man,
you jogged the memory, bro. Just saying we trained together and how your path went this way, and then I'm on this other end, projected to go third to fifth round, and I end up going undrafted. And I remember I'm just watching the draft go by, watching these rounds go by, watching these other receivers going, and getting the text message and saying from these coaches saying, "Hey, we still looking at you. We coming to get you in this next round. You still on the board," and things like that. And I'm just like, bro, don't hit my phone unless you don't stop it. And I got all the family around me, all this pressure, everybody looking. And then when it was over, I was like, damn, I felt like I let everybody down. I felt like I let my school down, my hometown down, my family down. I just felt so terrible because everybody was looking at me to go out and just see my name go across the ticker. And when that didn't happen, bro, I ain't gonna lie, bro. I went outside and I cried. And I was just like, I can't believe it felt so humiliating. I felt so embarrassed. I felt like, dang, like, and then to have to hurry up and make a decision on now I was a priority free agent. Now all these teams want to hit my phone up. I got about 12 teams calling my agent saying they want to get me as free agent. I'm like, bro, like y'all had all this time a couple hours ago. And I didn't understand the business side of it, but now I do, now that I'm on the other side of it. But in that moment, I was just like, bro, this is lame.
No, thank you for sharing, Cole. And that within itself, man, increases your anxiety. And I had the same experience as you did, Cole, sitting there watching the draft, and I mean, just and my agent is saying, okay, they'll give you a free agent deal, and it's just, man, the pressure. And I think, and here's the thing I want people to understand, right? It's not so much, for most of us, man, football has become an outlet. I think Joe talked about this earlier. It's become a way that we really self-medicate. It's how we escape, right? It's our playroom. If I can use that, to where we go and you're on the field, you get to get away from everything. But really, I know for myself, it was that underneath that helmet, and for many of us, right, it's the trials and the struggles of reality. And especially when you're sitting on the sideline and all of a sudden your mind just starts to go. And so many times your mind leaves the game and you have to snap back into it, because life is real outside of football. And what we all have learned was that we were trying to outperform our trauma. And so what we realized is that when football was over, as Joe said, now you had to face yourself, because we didn't have that buffer anymore. And so for this reason, as you've heard 3 guys share their experiences from just the league and from the experience, right? And also understanding that mental health is so big in just sports, because these are not just athletes. These are human beings who just happen to be professional athletes. And so just wanted to add that. And I want to go into this question, but this is a question: acknowledging and talking about my problems won't make them go away.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take a shot at that. I think it really comes back to awareness, right? And if you're talking about your problems and that obviously means that they're coming into your awareness. And I think the first step of healing anything is taking responsibility and taking self-responsibility of where you're at. And that's understanding the way you're showing up in the world. And when you can talk about, like Marcus was saying, when he was able to really confide in somebody and express like what he was actually going through, he was trying to lie to himself, right? And what we do is we try to act like we're fine, try and hold it all together, and that's what society tells us we need to do as men. And so it's almost like it creates this downward spiral. And I think the first step is acknowledging it. And I think once you do that and you are able to express it and someone listens to you and they can sit there, especially, that's why therapy is so powerful. Someone can really hear you and listen to you and understand you and it be okay. Then it's like, oh my gosh, this weight lifts off you, where you realize, okay, like I can express this. I don't have to hold on to this anymore. And I think that's where a lot of the issues come, as we hold on to all of this pain and we try to, escape from it, hide from it, bury it, numb it out. And I think the first step is having an awareness of it. And the more you can express that and find people that you trust and you can be open and vulnerable with, it does help release it. Yeah.
So, and I know everyone here has had experience with going to a therapist. So there's this myth that says, once I select a therapist, I should stick with them.
Yeah, that's not always gonna happen like that. It's not always gonna happen like that. It's like, that's just like saying that's just like saying I find my high school sweetheart, and then the chances of that, the chances of that is pretty slim. Like, you got to be, like, that has to be divine order in place, right? That has to be alignment in place. But that doesn't always happen unless, like, it was aligned.
Right.
That's the only way that can happen. But that's not everybody's situation. I know for me, the first time I got approached about therapy actually was in college. And I went through a drought as a receiver. I couldn't catch a cold, and it was messing with me mentally, that I wasn't able to snap out of it. So I was approached, by the guidance counselors at school, saying, "Hey, you should talk to our sports psychiatrist. He's dealt with guys in a situation like this before." And I didn't even give it a thought. I said, "Nah, don't miss me with that. I'll figure this out on my own. I'll go do something else, but I'm not doing that." And it was because of that stereotype. It was because of that stigma that was connected to it. And I wasn't nearly as aware or mature enough to where I am now to see the difference. But that's just a part of growth. And I look at that moment, and now I fast forward to when I was getting ready. I knew I was hurt on my last year, and my agent said the same thing. He recommended some therapists that he's worked with from other players, and I tried, and it just didn't feel right. And it took a while. But when that first one doesn't go right, I was just like, nah, I tried. I tried once, and and I'm like, I'm good. Like, it didn't work. So I'm not gonna put myself out there again to feel vulnerable again. And I already did it. So that was, that's something I had to experience, but it took a while for me to keep plugging away. And I'm grateful now that I got a guy who, was pretty solid. I call him my OG, and I'm grateful for him. So.
Man, that's awesome, Cole, man. Appreciate you for sharing, man. I often say, man, finding a good therapist, man, is like finding a good barber. You may have to get a few bad haircuts, man, before you find one. I mean, like you right, Cole. It's not one of those you go in. It's like, oh man, this is it. You know what I mean? It just has to be divine. But it's one of those situations where you have to really fill out the therapist to see, is it a good fit for you? Do you feel comfortable? Is there some relatability? And I think that's important.
Through my experience, it was just more, I was just so scared, man. I was scared. And when I walked in there, it was like I didn't want to be there, but I knew in the back of my head what I tried to do before. So I was just like, man, I don't care what happens. I'm just going to talk I don't really care who's sitting in front of me, and my wife is here. So it's like I didn't want to like leave because I asked her to come with me. But in the end, it ended up being a great session, and I kept going. But I understand too that it's not always going to be, it's just like you said, just with relationships or anything, you might have to keep, trying to see which one is the best for you. But in my situation, I just felt like, man, I don't care who hears this. I need to get this out because I am so frightened of what I just tried to do to myself.
Wow, yeah, man. That and too, man. For us as men, it's such a I think even when we look at it, even from a relational standpoint, right, is that we have to feel safe, and if we don't feel safe, because a man emotion is his most prized possession. To see, to get us to open up, man, we gotta really feel connected and feel open. It's almost like a locker room, right? There's a level of trust that you have with your teammates that you just don't have with the outside world. And you have that because the trust has been tested, the relationship has been tested. You bled, you sweat, you cried together. So you worked out, you grind. And then oftentimes, right, it's just that we feel better when we feel connected. And I think that's one of the most important things that I often share with a lot of clinicians is that, man, make sure that you're open as a therapist in order to create a room or an environment or an atmosphere for the individual to feel that they can be open. Because most definitely, if you don't have that openness, man, it's not going to be, you know, an opportunity where you can be vulnerable enough. And I believe vulnerability takes a certain level of trust for anyone to be able to say, I'm going to share with you my deepest fears, my thoughts, my concerns, and those things. So we have a question that was added, and this question is going to change direction and change course. And this is, of course, a myth, and want everyone to really speak and respond to this. Women experience more fatalities from mental health issues than men.
That one is real.
Yeah. Here, I see it like this, and you guys can see. I think it's twofold, and I think it's twofold because on one end we can look at the women who've experienced fatalities that are associated with a man who has mental health issues. You can look at it from that angle, or women who are self-harming as far as the fatalities pertaining to mental health issues. That's the other part of it. So I'm not sure how we debunk this myth because men are more successful, and these studies have been shown by the CDC, are more successful. Now, women have more suicide attempts, but men are more successful. So I do want to make that statement. Yeah, I think they threw one on us, man.
Yeah, good job, PAF.
On that, I would really just say that because I wouldn't know, like, because with what you just said about the statistics, I mean, if you do a lot of research and a lot of reading, you do see more women with more attempts, and then they might end up in the hospital, or they might end up in a recovery or whatever. I will say that. But recently, I can't remember. It was probably some months back. These two twins that played football. I think they went to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I saw that.
And, yeah, one of them committed suicide, and then the other one ended up committing suicide a year later. And they were successful, So yeah, I think I definitely can say true to what you're saying, just off of like some like just stuff that I've read. I definitely do think that, you know, more men are susceptible to finishing the job more than women are.
Because most men, right, when you look at statistics and you break it down as it relates to suicide attempts, most women are either drug overdose, cutting, you know, incidents or things of that nature. Most men are gunshots, hanging. Um, there's few overdose for men, but most men are very, you see more men jump off bridges, jump in traffic, you know, things of that nature. So I think with the statistics that we have and that we've been sharing, I think we can debunk that myth that women experience more fatalities. And again, I think women have more attempts, but men are more successful as it pertains to mental health. So, any closing remarks, man? And we'll start with you, Joe, you, Cole, and then Marcus. Closing remarks.
Yeah. You know, I think this conversation, you know, just thinking about it as you were talking is, you know, mental health is a systemic issue in our society and our culture, and it's not isolated, right? When we hold on to these stories and this pain and we don't express it and find someone to talk to, it doesn't just affect us. It ripples out to the people we love the most and the ones that are closest to us. And unfortunately, if we let it get to that point where, you know, these attempts happen and hopefully not successes, but that ripples out a lot further than we anticipate. And I think the key really is, you know, the way we can really help improve this is by finding people to talk to, finding people that we can be vulnerable with, express with, even, you know, surprise yourself and sit down and really go deep with somebody that you might not think that they would be capable of holding like a deep conversation. I think you'd be really surprised that if you're able to show up and be vulnerable in a relationship, you know, people usually match that and they'll show up for you. And I think it's really about just connecting with who we are and on a deeper level and healing ourselves, and it will send ripples out into our society and our culture and really make a big impact that we're all looking forward to in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Cole?
I think this conversation was impactful. I was encouraged, I was inspired, and I hope that this, us getting together will encourage and inspire other men and women who will get a chance to look at this. I want to encourage people, whoever is viewing and listening, to continue to practice self-healing, whatever that looks like for you, self-love, understand your self-worth on your journey of self-discovery. And it's different ways that you can, if you're not comfortable going out to see a therapist right away, I get it, I understand. One of the things that I did to begin with was I journaled for a long time. From 2018 to 2019, I did a journal for a year straight because that was a very pivotal moment for me. So, you know, a couple of years gonna go by and I'm gonna get a chance to go back and look at all my raw emotions that I put down, that I released. It was another way for me to release this, everything that I felt that was bottled up inside of me. And I shared this with Marcus probably a couple of weeks ago. An alternative to that, you know, I've started just doing voice memos because writing sometimes takes forever to get everything out. And sometimes right now I just turn the mic on and just press play and I'll just go. And that's another way for me to release and get comfortable being able to share my story. And whatever it is, there's options for you. And I want to encourage you to take that time to love yourself, meditate, pray. Joe, I know you meditate. I know you're on this journey as well. COVID has helped me with my discipline for meditation. I'm on a streak right now that I'm trying to get to 365 days straight. And, you know, You know, so I'm in that place right now, but it's a challenge. Every day hasn't been easy. Every day hasn't been easy. So you have to know that going in. It's like training camp. You know it's going to be some dog days ahead, but you just take one day at a time, believe in yourself, and love yourself.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Cole. Awesome, man. Beautiful. Beautifully spoken. Marcus?
Yeah, I would just say, man, this what we just did, man, was really awesome. And you know, whenever I do anything like this, it allows me to free myself too. And you know, talking about it, I still free myself every time I talk about it. I still feel amazing after I've spoken about past dealings that I went through and me expressing it to other men like yourselves. And I think that's amazing. I think that's just one little way that whoever sees this can see, like, man, if you get a few or a couple of brothers together that are on the same wavelength and are able to be vulnerable and knowing that they're not weak, and I think it could really help out a lot. I think it can change lives. But the most important thing I really want to say is that going to therapy, you know, you're not weak. You're not weak for going. You are strong. God made you to be strong. You know, sometimes God brings a therapist in your life to help you sift through all your pain, because like our ancestors and everything that has transpired from slavery till now, I think is embedded in us. Is embedded in us to mask everything. Just even with just us men in general, it just embedded us to not talk about it, because we just been conditioned that way. And to let that guard down is going to take all of us in these conversations to really show people, like, man, if I got a problem, I can go get it solved, and I'm not gonna. It doesn't matter what anybody else, you know, says about me, or you know how my friends or my parents or anybody look at me. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, my dad, he still don't believe in anxiety. I asked him the other day. I said, "Hey, like, you ever dealt with anxiety? You know, growing up or anything?" He was like, "Anxiety? What's that?" You know, so it's still unveiling, and still that thing of we need all of us to continue to keep speaking, to keep talking about it, because you know, if we can help one person, you know, that's all that matters.
Man, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, man. And again, I want to say thank you to Joel, to Cole, and to Marcus, man, for you guys being so transparent and being vulnerable and sharing your stories and sharing parts of yourselves on this experience. Also, I want to thank the PAF for allowing me this opportunity to moderate this beautiful panel. I think it's so beautiful, man, when men can come together and to be able to express and just to be able to show that we feel. And I want to remind those that are watching, to the brothers that are watching, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what walk your path has led you. Man, it's okay to feel. In fact, it is human to feel. And so allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to process, and give yourself the opportunity to be able to heal. And as a quote that I say often is that healing is a journey and wholeness is the destination. And that journey of healing is neither straight or short. It's a journey. And every time that you get the opportunity to express or to emote or to vent, take advantage of that space. If it's a safe space, man, because too many men are leaving here too soon. You know, whether it's heart disease, heart attacks, stress, you know, all these different things, suicide, because we're dying silently, you know, and so just to encourage all of the men that are watching, man, brother, you matter. Doesn't matter if you are pro athlete or you are janitor, you matter. So again, thank you to the PAF for this opportunity. This is Men Don't Need Therapy, Mythbusters. And so I hope this has been very impactful, informative, and enlightening to those that will watch this. Thank you.